Well, hi, everybody. I'm here today with Ritchie, who is a detransitioner I met on Twitter. And Ritchie, thank you so much for joining us. I really appreciate you coming on.
Thank you for inviting me on, Sasha. Appreciate it. I'm always willing to talk and explore this issue with as many people as possible, even though I feel like in this field, a lot of people start, how should I say, they're very familiar with each other's work, but there's always a branch out somewhere. So I'm more than happy to chat to you there.
Excellent. Thank you. And I first came across you from your viral Twitter thread. So I'm sure you probably get that a lot. You had this mega viral thread. J.K. Rowling took note of it. I think right now it's up to like 40 or 50,000 likes. And you basically just were candid and searing about the truth of your surgery, which the surgery is vaginoplasty. For people who don't know, it's also called penile inversion. And it is what's considered usually the final step in a transition for male to female. So, what's so important to me is to educate people on the risks of the surgery, on what can happen, because there's so much information out there from trans activists that tells people this is going to be great, this is going to change your life for the better, and then they kind of hide and obscure really the dark side and the dark reality of this. So first of all, Rich, what was it like when that thread went viral?
I mean, at the time, my posts were getting like a couple hundred likes at the most. So when it just took off, it was just like it just kept taking off and taking off. And I think what it was is the more I thought about it, I was like, the reason it was taken off isn't just because it was an honest statement and an honest account, but it was that there was this desperate sort of need for this experience for people to just say the truth, but just tell it like it is, without all the caveats, without all the terms and conditions. Like, I know this works for everyone else. I know I don't want to hurt anyone, and all that sort of shit. And it's like, it just, I was so angry because there were so many other people who were dealing with this in the background, and they were just unable to talk to even people close to them, and I resonated very strongly with that. My surgery was in 2018, so it's been like, at the time it was like 4 years, so a lot of people are still in that early regret process, like 1-2 years, and I already kind of been through the ringer sort of thing, and I'm just watching all everyone else being gaslit into silence, people scared to speak out, and I understand it's an immense pressure when you're hurt to say, listen, I don't want to spoil it for anyone else, but the way I see it, it's like, imagine, you know, being in a car crash and then not reporting it out of fear that they're going to put a speed limit on the road or something. That's all. I don't want anyone to stop driving. I just want people to take caution at these places where, things go too fast and it does end in a car crash. And I use that analogy a lot because it is very apt. So sorry, I'm trailing off, and you're gonna have to wind us in on things like this.
With the thread going viral, so it sounds
Yeah,
like that was the first big exposure that you had.
it was. Yeah. I mean, I had like a semi little viral moment before. I was in the newspapers for suing the NHS and all this sort of thing. But it was unreal. I was just all of a sudden on everyone's lips, and it's a very, very odd experience to be on the outsider and knowing all these faces, and then all of a sudden you're in their world.
Yeah, I can
But a lot
imagine.
of it was just done out of frustration. So I wasn't half surprised that it went the way it did, because I knew there was like people want to hear what it's like without any fear and restriction. And for me, a lot of it was just, I'm tired of this bullshit. I'm tired of dancing around niceties. I just want to say what it's like.
Yeah. And by doing that, you did such a service because a lot of people really don't know. And I do want to also ask you a little later on about, like you said, suing the NHS, and that's super important. And we're going to get to that. But, there are so many people who, even I talk to, they think that it's life saving care. And they think that it's bigoted to even speak against it. As you said, you felt like you would have to give these caveats, but that's why people need to see the reality. And if you're comfortable, could you tell us, some of the stuff that you talked about in the thread? Like you talked about, numbness in that region, lack of feeling, that you weren't warned about, and like phantom limb sensations
Oh yeah,
almost.
it's all the little things they don't seem to tell you. And I don't know, there's this presumption that because trans people know other trans people, that's enough from the clinicians to be like, oh, that person knows a trans person, so they know what the process is like. But what actually happens is, within the community itself, there is limited information on what is shared, on what goes wrong, and you only hear like these, at best, at worst even, sorry, you hear, it's okay, it's fine, it's okay. But that actually basically means that they don't have any sensation. They all call it insensate. And that was the first time I really woke up to there's something more going on. Because I kept hearing this phrase, people talking about being sensate and insensate. And the research says that 1 in 6 will have zero sensation following the surgery. But in my experience, it was about 5 in 6. Like out of all the friends, like there was about 12 or so of people who I knew in my personal life, some who I was very close to, some I wasn't at all. But I knew they'd all had surgery, some at different times, but mainly in the NHS. Some by the same doctor a decade ago and some later, and it was the same issues again and again and again. Insensate. And what it basically means is, because what you have to understand is when your body has like a tremendous trauma like this, like it reacts by shutting down the nerves. It's a very normal response for body trauma if you get in an accident. It's one of the reasons why people also go unconscious as well. It's like a self-defense mechanism to save you from the pain. And what a lot of people, well, I didn't realize, because I didn't know any of this until I started, which was until I regretted it and started researching it, was when you're under general anesthetic, for instance, the nerves in your body aren't switched off. They remember. And when you are hacking away, and I had severe blood loss as well, like really, really bad blood loss and surgery, that makes it all a bit worse. And even if you don't have as severe blood loss, because they expect blood loss with something like this, it's like they know it's gonna happen. But I bled way too much anyway. And with that, it damages all the nerves in the site. And you've got to keep in mind, they're taking an organ. Imagine your arm and they shed off all the skin, right? And they take away one of the muscles around there, one of the muscles there. They take out the bone, so you've only got like this sort of, you've still got some of the shaft left, but it's most of it is taken away, and then the sword inside your body. And that's essentially what's happening. And it's like, not only is all those muscle nerves being torn away, but you've got the muscle nerves inside your crotch, which is being torn away. So the likelihood of having any sensation is very low for a penile inversion. And a lot of people don't understand that, which is why the biggest trend at the moment are zero depth vaginoplasties, where they don't do the inversion. They still shred away the penis in the same way, but they don't do the inversion inside the pelvis. So they have very surface level result, and they get more sensation from that because it's less destruction. But it's, when you think about it, it's not unusual. And for female to males, and I'll use that term loosely, who have phalloplasties, and even males who have phalloplasties, it's exactly the same issue. Not only are you taking skin from another part of your body, detaching it, and those nerves are temporarily, essentially dead for a little while, you know, and then you're trying to reattach it on your body, and then like re-extend all the muscles that are lost. People just think that you can just fix this with another surgery, and this is the problem, that there's this reliance on the field of psychiatry that they can solve complex life issues that can't. Surgery can like, that this idea that surgery can solve all these complex body issues, that can't either, right? And it was the little things. So you get like a sheet of complications, and it's stuff like granulation, generic bleeding. It doesn't really go into the detail of what they mean in effect. It tells you what they are. But granulation is a very nice word for dead scar tissue. It's like scabby tissue. And all the next to every single wrist, we've got a figure, and it starts at like 1 in 200 and goes down to 1 in 2,500. And for people who go through this procedure, especially when you believe that this is the thing that's going to really make you this idea that you had in your head, you look at those risks and you think, you've got to be incredibly unlucky to have all of those. But what they don't tell you is that 100% of patients have at least 3 complications. 3. And I'm not talking like minor complications. And the scale of these, how bad they are, gets terrible. There's also the one that we all feared the most, which was the 1 in 32 chance of necrosis for the neoclitoris. So for those who don't know, the tip of the penis is used as the clitoris inside. And there's a 1 in 32 chance that can just fall off and you wouldn't know. And I've had people who have went to the surgeons and said, I think something's happened. I don't think it's there anymore. Can you check? And nurses have been like, yeah, it's fine, it's fine, it's fine. And then the surgeons had a look and went, yeah, it's gone. And they went, what do you mean it's gone? It happens. It's gone. And they just walk away. They don't care. The psychopaths, like, people don't understand how crazy these people are. They're all very smiley and happy, especially when they're wheeling you in. They don't look in you in the eye. They don't have good conversations with you. They don't, like, I didn't have a decent conversation with my surgeon. It was all through this head nurse, you know? And a lot of people have this experience where they don't really sit you down, they don't really look at your comorbidities. They said me all, like, he was aware I was extremely OCD and had all these other issues, and he said they were all well managed, and they rely on the psychiatrists to say everything's all well managed. But even if it goes quote unquote well, you still have a lot of other issues that come with it. So the site is very much, you've got to keep in mind, they rely on the fact that your urinary tract has changed to lubricate the area to stop it from drying up. So basically, they're relying on you pissing yourself to keep it moisturized. But obviously, for someone like me, I'm always using stuff like bio oil and stuff to stop that, because if you don't do stuff like that and you just leave it alone and you never ever maintain it, you get infections, you get sepsis. I know people who've let it close, and it's a terrible idea because it doesn't properly close. It leaves like these pockets behind, and these pockets get infected. And by pockets, I mean, imagine a shaft like that but closing like that, so you've got like this space like that and it doesn't properly ever close. And it's just hell. And then you've got the issue of, if you have, like me, when you engage in with sex with men, if they say, for instance, if I was having anal sex, and they went too hard, there's a chance they can perforate the passageway and stuff like that. And it's just all really like, they don't tell you. They say, oh, don't have anal sex for 12 weeks, but they don't tell you why. You know, it's like the kind of, they're hidden at some of these things, but they don't tell you. And it's all, you're already in this fantastical state that this is it, this is the thing, and I can just live my life after this. But in terms of other complications, I mean, I haven't even got started, but I suppose the biggest one for me, that I wasn't expecting, and I'd heard about suture lines, and I didn't think it was a big deal, but this happens more than often. So if you imagine the crotch region, and you've got the opening here, on about this area here, you've got two scar lines that keep it all together, and they popped open immediately on the day, and they got infected. And what that actually did was it caused it to heal inwards. So essentially, it looks like I've got, and especially back then, it was way worse because I've had revisions and stuff. But it looked like I had two vagina entrances, and I was devastated. And I was like, I look like a freak. This is freakish. This is horrible. I really don't like this. And how should I say this? I assumed that because I didn't like vaginas generally, that was a normal thing. Like, I'm using quotations for women, right? But real, like, actual women, right? I just assumed, well, they don't love their vaginas either, right? They're not like fucking praying around how great their vaginas are. So this is a very normal feeling. And I was just like, actually, what it was is I I'm gay. I don't like this at all. Even if it wasn't like this, I don't like this at all. And I don't know what the hell I was doing. It was this, for me, I think it was this idea of I will fulfill this role and, get the husband and play the family life sort of thing, live happily ever after. And I genuinely believe that was a reality that was within my grasp because I'd been told for the years leading up to it that I was an ideal candidate. I was very passable. I sounded the part. I looked the part. I was never getting stared at and stuff like that. When I first started transition, the first year or two, I definitely was. But yeah, sorry.
No, absolutely. I mean, I just want to say I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry that you went through this medical abuse, and you didn't deserve any of that. I hate the fact that this is what's being offered to people who need some form of help or support. And I also want to just talk a little bit about and explain for people who are listening about the surgery, a little bit more about it. It's people often say that people who get this surgery chop off their dick, but that's really just a shorthand. That's not quite an accurate statement. In reality, the testicles are sort of emptied out. The penis is dissected and inverted, as you said, and there's an online animated video that can be watched if people want to understand what the surgery looks like. It's not for the faint of heart. It's I mean, you've gone through this. I've watched it and felt this like visceral, horror. In some cases, the surgeon will actually use his or her fingers to create the canal, and there are other surgeons who use actually like a robot to help do this surgery. It's very complicated. I believe it's like 7 to 8 or 9 hours long. It's a very complex surgery. And you can let me know if any of this doesn't track with your experience, because this is from my research online. But and I also want to ask you just a couple like clarifying questions. People are probably wondering, like, how old were you when you got it? And then also I'm wondering, did the surgeons tell you that you would be a woman? Did they tell you that this would be a vagina? Did they use those sort of terms for it?
Yeah. So firstly, in regards to the length of the surgery, That really depends on the procedure. I don't know much about I know they're doing a lot of stuff with robotics now, and I would imagine that might slow things down. But the surgery I had was meant to last 2 hours and 45 minutes. But because of the severe blood loss, I was in for 5.5 hours, as they were trying to like stop the bleeding, obviously. In the other question, which was, sorry,
How old were you when you got the
how
surgery?
old? It was 2 days before my 31st birthday that
Okay.
I had surgery, and I medically transitioned at 26. So
Okay.
I was an adult, and the narrative says, adults can make your own choices, blah blah blah. I understand that, and so we should, but I still think, like, even if you look at my case in retrospect, there were so many blaring red flags. I'd refused the surgery for 2.5 years in the gender clinic, and I had a lot of gender therapy as well, because they say, oh, you should get therapy before you have surgery, but I had gender therapy, right? And that's like saying, I'm not sure if I believe a God or not. Okay, go see a priest for 5 years and see if you then if that helps your faith. Why on earth would they foster any doubts? They believed in it. Every doubt and every sort of anything that I had was just all tread away. I had an explanation. It was internalized transphobia. There was societal sexism. There was all these crazy sociologist-based phrases that I believed because I was being told them by the therapist. And the thing is, I really trusted the therapist because I had a lot of issues, naturally. Because you don't come into this like as a healthy. There's very few people who had very, very like balanced lives as kids and as young adults who transition. It's like a tiny, tiny percentage. Most people have come from some form of trauma. They've had a variety of different issues, most of us, how should I say this? And this may sound weird, but most of us come from like good providing families and stuff, like, and it's a lot like working class, middle class. It affects everything, but it's not as stereotypical as you think that this is all down to like severe sexual abuse and stuff. It's not that simple. The reasons on how we get here are very varied, but a lot of it comes down to the parental relationship. My parents divorced. There was the bullying at school because I was nerdy, gay, I was autistic. I say I was. I didn't give that up. I'm still that. And I had very predictable traumas for anyone who meets that criteria. Very predictable. But I also had a very, very obsessive mindset, like very, very high level of OCD. So I've had obsessive compulsive disorder since about 7, which is, it comes in the forms of intrusive thoughts, repetitive thoughts, thoughts I can't dislodge. And it generally makes you feel like a visceral reaction. And I had this explained to me recently about these. It's like a form of self-punishment. So all these things that bother you, you think because you know it bothers you, but you feel bothered by the fact that you thought the thoughts to begin with. So it's it's very destructive. And that pattern of thought, when you align it with transition, is equally destructive too, because it all gets swapped out for the obsessiveness of, I need to transition, I have these surgeries, this will fix this will do that. And a lot of us have got a very, very, you could almost script it out for a lot of us. Like when I talk to a lot of people online and stuff, the similarities are so striking. Like I could narrow them down for most people. Like it's about 80% of us roughly have a very strong relationship with a mother and a very weak relationship with a father. It's about 40% of us are gay. About 30-ish% are bisexual. Like I'm talking about in detransitioners. In the actual cohort of trans, it's mainly heterosexual. which is what's very interesting, is a lot of the people who come to terms with their sexuality as they grow up and as they age out of these things. And I had a very arrested development because I'm just me, and this is just what happens. And by the time I got into me very early 30s, I really started doing all the work that most people do in the mid-20s. Do you know what I mean? I was just a little bit behind socially. And that's very, very normal, especially in the trans brigade, because a lot of us are very nerdy. It's basically nerd culture, in a way, that has been medicalized. A lot of us don't feel like men or women, whatever it is, and then you get given this idea. And I've totally rambled off track from the original questions, Sasha.
No,
I'm
that's
so
fine.
sorry.
It's all your thoughts are really interesting, and it also gives me so many more questions I want to ask you. But the one thing that I was curious because from some things I've read online, I was looking at for some articles I wrote, I was looking at the surgeons' websites, and I was like, what are they saying to people? How are they presenting this? And a lot of them would just say, your new vagina, you will be a
Oh yeah,
woman. Like, and I spoke to Shapeshifter, who you might know from Twitter,
yeah.
who is also a detransitioner. It's complicated in terms of whether, I'm not sure he's like identifies 100% with detransitioner, but regardless, he got the surgery, he regretted it, he has gone through horrible complications and just suffering. And he told me as well that they told him he would become a woman. His surgeon said, you will be able to have sex with straight men with your new vagina, which is just so, I mean, it's so heart-wrenching to tell that to a vulnerable gay man and to lie in that way. So I was wondering if they overtly told you, like, this will make you a woman, this will give you a vagina.
Well, as for what the surgeon said, I don't think so. I had very little conversations with the surgeon, but what did happen, and I've talked about this publicly before, in the what do you call it? The pre-op assessment, where I ended up going with like two other people, unbeknown to me, and I had no idea you did it in threes, but there you go. They do it in groups of people now, which is disgusting. And I'm sat in this room, and the surgeons on the other end are like he's like facing sideways, looking at his computer, and in between us is the head nurse. And she's got this big hardback book, and she's just facing it like this, and she just starts turning the page, and it's just a collage of women's labias and vaginas.
Oh, wow.
And she's just going, if you look notice, every vagina is different, blah 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 blah. And I'm like looking at them, and I'm just thinking, I'm really confused. It was such a bizarre feeling, like just getting shown this book, and she was kind of talking to us like, well, we were intellectually disabled, she would say. Very slow, every vagina's different, if you noticed it. And then it was just like, hang on. And then I've talked to others about this, and they're familiar with this book, this horrific book. I haven't found out the name of it. I don't even know if it's the results from surgery or if it's women's vaginas. We've got no idea. We just got shown this book. So straight away you're like, okay, well, every vagina is different. So if mine looks different, that's okay then. Was the message that we're left with. And they always, they refer to all of it like your vagina. They might say stuff like neo vagina. But even now, when I'm going to appointments, because I've got issues down there, I've got a skin condition called lichen sclerosis, which existed before surgery. They just didn't bother. They just didn't care it was there. Now it's in the very back inside, and it's causing a lot of hell. So that requires a urologist to look at and a dermatologist. I get palmed off into gynecology for that, even though it's not a vagina, it's an inverted penis. But urologists won't touch it. The male equivalent of what I go to, they won't touch it. They will not. They will not. They will not go near it. They all say the same thing. You need to go back to the surgeon. So here's the thing about my surgeon. And again, I didn't know. No one fucking told us. But in 2018, when he did my surgery, he was 72, right?
Oh, wow.
I know. And I was like, I knew he was like, I looked at him, I was thinking, you look like you're close to retirement age, but that's fine. You must be at the end of the career, whatever. If I knew he was as old as he was, I wouldn't have done it. And it just so happens that in his last couple of years, he did the most screw ups.
Oh,
So
wow.
a lot of people in the year who had surgery that I did are now trying to sue. But he died last year, the cheeky bastard. He died of fucking arsehole. Like, can you believe that? I didn't do it as well. I really want to understand that. But if you know anyone who can resurrect the dead, I would be interested to know because I want to ask them some questions. Sorry.
Yeah, bring him to
I'm out.
justice.
Yeah, I would really, really like. I would have relished the opportunity to hear his view because at the end, the more I think back to it, he just seems so tired. He seems so disconnected, and you know, my mother was like, he seemed a bit weird, and he always jogged everywhere. He was always jogging places. He was always rushing to get somewhere. But yeah, I think most of them are all fucking psychopaths, like most of them, and they're just, and part of psychopathy is just not really caring of the damage you're inflicting. And no matter how many years you've been doing it for, like the way I think about it, it's like just because you've done something for years and years doesn't mean that you would think the opposite would apply. You become more cautious, you become more experienced, you become more aware of it. But the opposite seemed to happen. You just didn't care. Just whatever. And when I was in the hospital, and because I had a lot of blood loss, as I said earlier, I I was kind of semi-complaining to the nurse, and I can't remember exactly what I said to trigger it, and it was about day 4 or 5, and I was half conscious, and she kind of sighed and went, "We're always getting sued," and I was just like, that was a weird statement. And then
Whoa.
the more I kind of tie things together, I'm like, they're just doing this. They're getting sued. No one's talking about it, and it's just grinding on and on and on and on and on. And I'm like, why? Like, why? It's almost as if like they know themselves. This is bullshit. The 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 like selling really bad used cars to people and pretending that they're brand new and they're gonna last you forever, but actually going down this route is gonna cause you a hell of a lot of issues in your life. Um and yeah.
Yeah.
And this is, to be honest, despite the thread and stuff that I wrote, mine isn't even the worst. Mine's far from the worst. And this is the point. If you think that was bad, it gets way worse. Like, you got people with leftover erectile tissue, and they don't explain this, but the erectile tissue itself is actually in the male body. It's not all in just the dick. It doesn't just expand because of blood. It's literally like a tube that kind of extends outwards. So the idea is they're meant to like sever this at the base so it doesn't protrude. But they don't always do it for whatever reason. They might miss it, or they're sloppy or lazy. So you have literally people who have got like what I've got, and they don't have a dick or balls, and they've got, when they get aroused, they've got this clear tube that is just coming out of the hole at the bottom. I mean, how fucking horrible and horrifying is that? You've got all the fistulas, where you've got holes between the bowels and the colon and the cavity. I'm I'm trying my best not to call it a neo vagina or a vagina. I try to call it the cavity or the surgical site because it's all a language game. Like, they call it like bottom surgery for a reason because it like bottom surgery sounds so innocent and it's just bottom surgery, top surgery. But when you say it for what it is, you know, it sounds a lot more savage and brutal because that's what
Mhm.
it actually is. And we're all in this collective lie. And the thing is when it does work, because the surgery for some does work, then what it does is it propels this for many, and I would say this is the vast majority, even the ones who are stereotypically gay. There's a fantasy that comes along with it, and my fantasy was I am a woman. That was, I'm not saying it was like this sexual perversion 24/7. It was a fantasy I'd built in my head. Like some people fantasize that they're going to be like this entrepreneur and this rich person, and they try project that feeling onto the world, and that's kind of what I meant. And I think people looking outside inwards, because the discourse is so fucking horrible and without nuance, that they assume that males who transition, and only males, never the females who can be way more promiscuous, that we're all constantly thinking of sex 24/7, and it's simply not true. We don't have the energy for that. Who does? And besides, you've been needed by hormones and drugs. It's a different type of fantasy, and this is why you've got anime accounts for a lot of young trans people. Anime is the perfect appeal for fantasy, because you can. There's such a wide variety of it, and it's all about projecting. Sorry, again, I'm going off on one.
That's fine.
I can't even remember what my original point was. I'm so sorry.
No, that's okay. I mean, everything you're saying, it brings up more important stuff, and the fantasy and the delusion. I said delusion, you said fantasy. When I say delusion, I'm wondering if the doctors, the surgeons, have deluded themselves into thinking that they can really create the impossible, or they might be psychopaths, like you said. It depends on the individual.
They know 100% it doesn't work. They know.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
They know. They are used car salesmen selling dodgy cars. They know exactly what they're doing. 1000%. I think some of the therapists don't have a clue. I think some of the therapists who have got a very frontline view, seeing people like in person before and maybe after, they don't see the recovery process, they don't see the gruesomeness, they don't see the long nights, they don't see the in-between bit, the despair, and because it's devastating, and they don't see that, and so they've got very naive view. My psychiatrist told me at the gender clinic that you'd be amazed at what the skin around the surgical site can do, implying that my brain would remap the skin to perform like labia, in a way. Like, that's what I was told. And I believed that, because I was very unwell, and not only was I unwell, but I didn't have that critical thinking, because critical thinking was banned. There was no way. If a gender critical or somebody back then would have approached us, and they were kind of non-existent, it was very fringe. Like when I started, like 2013, 14, it was very, very fringe. And you'll be like, oh, that's just some random nut. I don't know what the hell they're talking about. But by the time I got surgery in about 2018, and there was a little bit of more gender critical voices, I was just like, I had a very misogynistic view of them. I was like, these are just jealous women. And you're just like, they're not jealous women, but you will believe what you want to believe, or they just want to kill us, or they're just ignorant, or they're just like bored middle class housewives with nothing else to do. And it was all this sort of like, it was so easy to dismiss them and to whatever. But also there's this belief with some of them that they were politely sitting on the sidelines going, you know, there are all these issues and all this sort of thing. And they'd like to pretend retrospectively that's what they were doing. But retrospectively, they were screaming just as badly as TRAs. So no one was listening to each other. I'm already in my camp. For me to change my mind, I then would be like them changing their mind. Why would they? Why would they? Why would they? They wouldn't. No one would. And this idea that just because everyone believes they are right, whatever they are doing, they believe that I'm right because of, Marsha P. Johnson threw the first Brexit, even though he didn't, sorry. See, even I've fucking been victimized by this Marsha P. rewriting history. They're trying to say that the Nazis were targeting the trans community. It was a load of bullshit. They were targeting gay men. Nazis love to cross-dress, by the way. They had some big HEP shit, so I don't think they were like wholly against it. They were definitely against homosexual men, though, which is where the whole pink triangle thing came off. But everything's been retconned into this sort of trans thing. Even this delusional barrister in the UK, trying to remember his name, who is an absolute like disgusting looking person. I know that's a horrible thing to say, but they really are like bleh. Like if they came into my toilet, even though I'm going into the men's, I'd be like fucking hell. Like anyway, but and I can't imagine that what women would feel. But this person, they said that they had a part in taking down the Berlin Wall because they were. This is well before they transitioned as well, and they didn't, by the way. They had nothing to do with it. But it's like it's insanity. It's like fantasy, delusion, call it what you will. It's not reality based. It's not based in logic. It's based on fantastical thinking, which is why anime is capturing so many young people. And why are people running to this fantastical model and thinking the world sucks? It really fucking sucks.
Yeah.
So we're not given much, and also the messages that are out and about there, you can say it's all like toxic, whatever. It's all a load of bullshit. Like things are bad. Money is tight for everyone. Like prices are going up, opportunities are getting less. You're just getting all this information flowed to you. The world is shit. Why wouldn't you want to live as an uwu anime girl, whatever? Why wouldn't you? Like, fucking, I'm just saying, I empathize with the people who are, in my opinion, in that because it's a belief system. You've got to believe that you're part of something. You've got to believe that you're doing something, not just for yourself, but for others, that you are right because you are embracing the autonomy of liberalism by doing what you want with your body. But that is you're not doing what you want with your body because you are being misdirected to do with what you want with your body. It's a load of bullshit. It's like
Right.
Jonestown Massacre bullshit.
Right, you're being misdirected by someone who has a profit motive, who has a career motive, who has all these ulterior motives where they're not the ones who are going to have to live with the results. They're not going to have to live with the pain and, like you said, the long nights and
Yeah.
the dilation that you have to do if you want to keep the canal open. They're not going to have to live with the infections and all of that. It's like you said, when you said your surgeon would run a lot, I feel like he was trying to run away from the truth. He was trying to keep himself in his mindset where he didn't have to face up to it. And maybe when he got to the end, maybe he had, some moment of, we can only hope that he maybe had some moment of clarity or honesty with himself. But I mean, I see you shaking your head and it's like, most people like that, they probably don't. They probably never
And if
do.
he did, it wouldn't mean anything, would it?
Yeah,
'Cause
right, it
that's
wouldn't change a thing. It wouldn't
no.
change a
I
thing.
mean, it would mean something if he came back and was like, "Listen, I have spent all my life on this destructive course. I've
Mhm,
got this great, huge trust fund and foundation dedicated to the victims of all the butchery that I have personally endured." Okay, that's one thing, but
mhm.
you didn't. You
Yeah.
died a very rich man, very
Wow.
affluent rich man, as most of them are, and it's you've got a patient group that manages itself. That is amazing. Not only do they do your PR for you because they're liking and they're sharing and they're promoting you, and you need to do is let the business come to you as well. All these very vulnerable, delusional people, and you go, yeah, cutting your breasts off will affirm you as a man.
Yeah.
Oh, you've been on testosterone for 4 years, and this applies to women. And I don't know why this isn't common knowledge, and I don't know why enough people aren't raving about it. But women who take testosterone for a certain amount of time, and it's normally about the 4-5 year mark, are recommended to get a hysterectomy. And whilst I think the unnecessary removal of breasts is quite a bad thing, I think that is also way more criminal. It's so criminal to give a woman remove like a hysterectomy when they're like 24, 25, like for life,
Right. Right.
Like
Right.
I don't, and it's these little things like, and what we're doing and what we're creating, yeah,
They have to live with forever. I mean, if people don't know, the hysterectomy thing is because when you're on hormones, they can experience the atrophy of the womb, and so it has to be removed, as you said. And like you said, they don't make a point of warning young girls this, and even if they do, it's like, as a really young kid, no way should you be allowed to consent to that. My personal view is that it should not be allowed for surgeons to do it to adults either. Not because adults can't make their own decisions, but because I don't think a surgeon has the right to cause harm. That's my personal view on it. But when it comes to kids, it's even more. You can get even more people to agree that it's not
yes,
right because of the consent issue. They're a child.
yeah. I mean, why don't we give kids credit cards?
Mm-hmm. Right.
Because they can't make a judgment on spending or finances.
Right.
It's the same why they can't vote, why they can't drive, why they can't
Can't
join
get
the
a
army,
tattoo.
all that
Right.
sort of thing.
Exactly.
But
Exactly.
you
And
know,
here in the US, because I know you guys have it different, you guys are smoking and drinking at a much younger age legally, but here in the US you have to be 21 to drink. I think they may have even changed cigarettes to 21, although I don't remember. It might
wow.
be still 18, but tattoo 18. So the fact that you could do these irreversible operations, that you could alter and damage your body forever, is insane. And
I mean,
yeah, no, go ahead, please.
again, I know like the tattoo thing is a good example and stuff, but I really do imagine just going to a 15-year-old and goes, $15,000. Do you want it? It's a credit card, mind. Yeah, I want 15 grand. It's a credit card, mind. You'll be paying it back for probably 30 or 40 years, the rest of your working life. But it's 15 grand. Do you want it? Yeah, I want £15,000. I could do so much with £15,000. £15,000 would change my life. 15 grand wouldn't really change your life. Just like getting the surgery won't really change your life. But
Yeah.
when you're younger, even in your 20s, you think, if only I had this, it would make this better. And it's cruel. It's a very cruel thing to say to anyone.
Yeah.
And I really think the solution around this, especially for surgery, is some sort of competency or understanding with the surgeon and the patient, where the surgeon, in however way they want to do it, makes it clear that they understand that the patient understands. And when they understand, despite everything, and they still want to go through with it, that is a different matter. If it goes wrong, they still have like matter to recourse, in my opinion. If you get your car, again, going back to these analogies, if you take your car to get repaired and the mechanic accidentally breaks your engine, you're gonna expect them to fix it, right? And they're not gonna be like, oops, it broke, sorry. Like, no, you fix it. Terrible analogy, because it's totally took us off track from where I was
No,
before.
but it's a great point, because they're not even doing that, right?
No.
They're neglecting follow-up. And also, that made me think of another point, which I think cannot be stated enough, which I originally read in Abigail Schreier's book, Irreversible Damage, that for regular cosmetic surgery, like boob job, nose job, those types of surgeries, the purpose is to change the form of the body part, but never to damage or destroy the function. But it's only when you get to trans surgeries where the function of the body part is now being destroyed or damaged. And so, forget about even coming in and trying to fix it. It's like they're destroying it in the first place. If you get your nose done and then afterwards you can't use your nose to breathe, that would be considered botched. And like you said with the car example, it would be on them. It's established that it would be on them to fix that, or you could sue them. And but with trans surgeries, that's why some people say. Also, I want to ask do you agree with this statement that for a vaginoplasty it has 100% failure rate because you cannot turn a penis into a vagina? I wonder what you think of that.
Failure rate. So if you're talking about like the sort of the semantics on it, you can go in all sorts of very interesting places. But the real failure is you're at that position to begin with. Like, I feel that in itself is a failing. It's a failing of exploring every opportunity. It's kind of like throwing you to the last resort. Again, imagine going back to the car. It's like, hey, my car sounds funny, and they go, "Well, better replace the engine." Then you haven't looked at it, and it's just like, whoa, hang on. And sorry, again, I'm getting lost off on these analogies. This happens all the time.
No, that's okay. That's okay. I also wanted to ask you, when did the regret start? When did that set in?
Very, very, very instant. It was like literally in hospital. I was like, shit. Second, I was like really conscious because for the first few days, because I'd lost so much blood, I was so in and out. I couldn't tell when I was dreaming or not, and if I had a conversation with somebody, if it was real or who was there, who wasn't there. I cannot remember my birthday or anything like that. I was just totally like out of it. But I remember when I had my blood, I had 2 units of blood on day 5. They eventually give us a transfusion. And one of the reasons why he delayed it is so it didn't show up. If a surgeon delays a transfusion past 48 hours, because they don't like giving transfusions anyway, for various different reasons. But if they delay it past 48 hours, the transfusion doesn't count as their stat. It counts as like a post-recovery stat. Because it kind of knacks your mark or score as a surgeon when you have extreme like blood loss and stuff in surgery. So there was a motivation for him to do that too, and that kind of annoyed us because it was like, you've got to keep in mind, although I lost a lot of blood in surgery, I was still bleeding. You lose a lot more blood after surgery. So by day 5, I'd lost nearly half, like about 40% of my blood. It was about 2,500 milliliters. It was a crazy amount in total. I was on death's door, literally like 41-degree temperature, really bad. So what was the original question? Sorry.
So the regret. No, that's
the
so
regret.
hard. I'm so sorry you went through that. Yeah, the regret.
So when I had the blood in and I'm instantly awake, I'm like, shit, this is real. I didn't just imagine this. This is a real thing. And it was also the day I had the bandaging coming out. It's called packing, which is basically what they shove inside the cavity to heal it up as they start the dilation process then too. And I just had like this mirror shoved in front of me face, and I saw and I gasped. Like, that was my actual reaction. I was like, do you know when you just see something and your heart knows that that's wrong, that there's something, woof. And I think it's the same reaction that you were talking about earlier about that animation for the surgery, where you're like, it's because you know that shouldn't be happening. And it was that part of my brain that was going, this isn't right, this is wrong. I'm like, oh my God, what have I done? And when about 3 months after surgery, I'm at home and I'm like miserable, by the way. I'm like this. I was like sitting like, wait, after I'd got home and I was certain I'd fucked up, and I was a bit of a buzzkill around people, and a lot of people didn't want to be around us because I was so miserable and I was very hard to deal with, naturally. And 3 months after, I started my gender therapy sessions again at the gender clinic, and I'd had about 70 sessions at this point with this guy. And the first thing I said was, this was a huge fuck up. It was all regret. I shouldn't have done it. And then he said no. He said it wasn't regret. He said it was OCD. It was because I had high levels of anesthesia and pain medication and opioids, and that lowered me serotonin. That increased OCD ruminations, and this is why you're thinking you regret it. So I went back every session for about 6 months and said the same thing. No, this is regret. And then he said, okay, it's clear that your OCD is really bad. When you're referred for OCD. So I got referred for OCD treatment, and they said I have really bad OCD, but the reason I was acting out was I had unstable personality disorder as well. And I'm like, no, this is regret. Like, I know this is regret. I know, I'm telling you. And they're like, no, it's your mental health. And I'm like, fuck you, And it was very like, you're like, what the fuck? And I'm trying to tell people, I'm like, all I'm trying to say, I'm not even blaming them at this point. I'm like, I've made a mistake. I'm regretting it, and I'm robbed of that. I can't even say that. And I was just like, fuck this. And I got discharged in January 2020, and to them, it was all success. And in the meantime, I'm reeling. I'm just reeling. I'm so angry. Because I couldn't even say I fucked up. And that's all I wanted to do. I wasn't blaming anyone at that point. I wasn't saying, this is their fault, this is the surgeon's fault. And I was like, part of us was like, I had very obsessional thinking. Why did you let me do this? Why? And they were like, oh, we explored all this. No, it was a bunch of bullshit, the whole thing. I was very, very aggrieved. And then I assumed, oh, well, I've kind of made me bed here. I need to just lie in it. And I had all these post-surgery visits for urology and to a specialist for the scar. Like, it was just never ending, and I was getting very, very tired because I knew, like, every time I had something come into recovery, I was like, it's okay, I'll deal with it. It'll get better. Maybe it is regret. Maybe it is OCD and not regret. Maybe it is just because I'm a very unstable person generally, and this sort of thing is normal to me, where I do have really bad periods, I do have really bad dips. So I really wanted to believe that. And then I think for me it was about 2021 or 2020 probably. I'd lost myself back in conspiracy theory. Like, I'd been way into conspiracy theories for years and years and years. Very, very paranoid individual, very unwell, but I had a lot of fun with them. Thankfully, I didn't do any damage or anything like that, but I believed loads of crazy shit, like all sorts, right? To the point where my whole reality was skewed, like mad shit, And then from those circles, I found this website which had nothing to do with conspiracy theories, and it was a pure accident how I found it. And the website was very critical of transition treatments, and had a lot of what you would call gore, which is like the gory pictures from surgery. And I started like looking at them because I couldn't find them anywhere, right? I was really struggling to find them on Reddit. And what I really wanted to find out was, were my issues normal, or was I just very unlucky? Like, it could just be the case that I'm unlucky. And the more I dug, the more I found that not only was it like normal, but it was like quite widespread. And we all just got abandoned. and case closed. End of story. And that was the story of us. And that's fine. Because we are the ones who chose to have the surgery. And I'm like, that's not fine. That's not okay. Why are we expendable? And I'm like, I need to say something about this. And then the thing is, like, my detransition itself, because of the surgery, again, when I was talking about that fantasy earlier, that all came crashing down. There was no, I'm gonna have a happily ever after now. That had gone out the window. So my idea of me just living a life as a woman and whatever that meant, that was gone out the window now. Because to me, I was like, this, it almost woke us up to a lot of it. And a lot of it was language manipulation as well. I was like, I'm still a fucking male. It doesn't matter what they say about the hormone levels or anything like that. I was like, I'm still a male. That'll never ever fucking change. And one of the other things that was happening post surgery was I would get very close to a guy, and just as they were about to meet, and I would be on camera and nothing like totally bad, and it was just like games and just general dating, chatting on WhatsApp, and like they could see like me in fall and stuff like that. Fine, and I was like, okay, we're getting somewhere, and we're about to meet, and I'm like, I need to tell you now before it gets any further, I'm trans. Boom, and it would end every time, every fucking time, and I was sick of getting me heartbroken with this expectation that a straight man would be interested in another male. Why would they? It's a crazy expectation. And the more I sort of realized that, I was like, hang on, let's just think this through and imagine if it was on the other foot. And I was like, if I was a man who wasn't a woman, I would really want a woman. I wouldn't want a pretend woman. Why would I want that? Why would I want somebody who can't have kids if I want a family? Because a lot of the men, because I wanted family, these people wanted family. Some of the men said to us, they naturally felt betrayed because they said I'd wanted kids and they'd assumed that like I could have kids because I wanted them. And I was like, well, I was thinking maybe adopting, obviously, because and then again, it was like all these things were coming crashing down, and I kind of realized the whole thing was for nothing. It was all fantasy. It's all, and the reason it's fantasy is because there's so much effort into making the fantasy a reality. It's like if you repeat the same thing over and over and over and over again, eventually people will believe it. Like trans women are women. I'm sorry, if there were, you wouldn't need to say that, would you? It would just be a matter of fact. You're not hearing everyone saying the sky is blue, the sky is blue, because it's a matter of fact. You don't need
Yeah.
to do that unless you want to start a rally and saying, actually, the sky is black. The sky is black. Because at night it's black, because the space and all that shit, right? The sky is black. Prove me wrong. And we're like, it's not though, is it? It's blue.
Yeah.
Again,
Yeah.
another shit analogy, but there you go.
No,
Another
I mean,
fireball.
absolutely. And it's this like reality versus deception. Like we all deceive ourselves in certain ways, and it can protect us sometimes, but sometimes it hurts us so much more because it can keep people in abusive situations. Like
Yeah,
because you were being gaslit, you're being told this is just OCD. You don't really have regret. To me, that is so egregious and just infuriating that they
that
could
was
do that.
that was the thing that drove me to legal action. Not the surgery, not how bad it went. That's what
Mm-hmm.
drove me to sue them. Not
Good. Okay. So
complain.
tell us
I was
about that. Tell us about the legal
so
action.
um I had me viral thread around that time. No,
Mm-hmm.
if I'm remembering me timing, my viral thread came first, then the legal action came second. Sorry, I screwed that up. Um, because I'd asked about like to a few lawyers before I'd even like got any sort of following. And they were all like slamming doors in my face. No way. No. You've got 3 year limitations. It was 2022. You had the surgery 2018. You passed the limitations. So just to explain limitations is in medical negligence, you've got 3 years to raise the medical negligence complaint. Can be extended to 5 or 10 depending on the circumstances. It just so happened recently, and I know I'm jumping ahead here, that they've agreed to extend that limitation for me, which is why I'm allowed to sue, because I am effectively, according to the limitations, out of time. Because it's all to do with your awareness of when something really went wrong. And even though I was like raising it and I was complaining, I had accepted their belief. It was OCD, it was UPD, and it wasn't real regret. And it wasn't until years after, essentially 2022, when I really realized, I was like, hang on a second, this isn't right. And everyone was like, you should sue, by the way. Have you thought about suing? I was like, nah, I could never win. I've got no money. I don't really, like, I've got my mother and stepdad and stuff, but I don't really have any other family outside of that. So I don't have any money. I'm not from money. I'm very, very working class family sort of thing. So I was like, there's no way I can sue. I couldn't afford to do that. So it was just a non-go. And then I got a barrister got in touch, lovely guy, from, he's called Peter Harth, and he's gent. And he drove from Liverpool, which is about 150 miles away, to mind meters to talk with me. And like, you got to keep in mind, up until this point, I'm approaching lawyers now. Like, this guy's interested, and he takes notes. He gets us to a few firms. I didn't even sign up to him. I didn't pay him anything. He didn't bill us. None of this shit. I'm never paid a penny to this dude. And he was just like, he wasn't just doing this from the goodness of his own heart. Obviously, he was doing this because he had an interest in this field, and he wanted to kind of break into it in a way. And to do that, you've got to kind of do a little bit of unpaid work, which is fair enough. But I was very grateful for him to even do that, because it's a cost to him. And he was very, very instrumental in getting the right legal people on. I've been through a couple firms since. The first firm, when they took it on, they were the first one who wanted to take it on was a massive firm, and they couldn't take it on because their defendant was the NHS or something like that. So that had a conflict. And the next firm who went through me medical records, it was as they were kind of coming through my medical records, because my medical records are insane because I had so many appointments and there's so much documented stuff. And fortunately, there's a lot of what I've said is documented too. Like what I've said publicly, what I've said to you today, a lot of that was like in my records. So, they, at the end of it, they were like, "This is way too big. This is huge. We can't bring this forward. We want to, but just can't. It's too big." And then that led me to where I am now, which is with a firm called Slater and Gordon, who are based in London. And they're excellent as well. Fantastic. And it's a very slow process. I always knew it was going to take a slow amount of time. But essentially, there are several defendants. One of them is the NHS. I can't say who the others are. And we've had agreement from most of them so far that they agree that we can extend the limitations past the 3-year thing. So the next stage is then like a sort of discovery, and they might come back and say, we reject your claim completely, or they might come back and say, we accept liability. It really will go one or two ways, you can't tell. Sorry, I had a bit of a fly there. But yeah, so that's kind of where we're at. It's a bit of just waiting. I don't know how it's going to turn out. I don't know if it will be successful. Naturally, I hope it will. I'm just glad I got the chance to do it. And also, this is all pro bono, which is what I made sure of, because again, I ain't got no money. You know what I mean? And I wouldn't have been able to do this if they didn't come up with some sort of no win, no fee arrangement, which is what I'm on. And that requires a strong case too. They don't just do that for the clout, because there's not that much clout involved in taking a case that's not going to be successful. So that kind of gives us a little bit of reassurance as well, that they believe in me, they believe in the case, they've seen the notes and they agree with what I'm saying, that there's something very wrong here. So just having that opportunity is great, and I'm grateful for it, regardless of how it turns out.
Yeah. How can people support you if they want to support you through the legal battle, or just in general? Can they donate, or is it more just spreading awareness?
I've got a PayPal thing. If you wanna like buy us a coffee or something,
Okay, I'm gonna link that. That's
bless you.
perfect. Yeah.
But really, I try and do this as minimal cost as possible. And I will say to people, like, just donate what if you can. Don't ever. I don't want anyone who's struggling for money to ever send me anything just because they feel guilty or something like that. Just don't, like, but every little helps. I do a lot of visits around the country to see people in the background, talking to a lot of detransitioners, organising help for them as well. I thought about like doing a charity thing, but I think that adds a lot of complications. In a way, I should really, but I'm kind of operating like across borders, shall we say. And I think if I was official, it'd make it very difficult. No, I'm confessing that I've done anything other than get people help with housing and shit like that. And we're all struggling. A lot of us are trying to rebuild. A lot of us, like, we are all very much, everyone's struggling in this world. But when you detransition, you're kind of you're starting over again, in a way. You know, and it would be great if everyone who was harmed by detransition had a fund from the doctors and surgeons who did this. No one else. I don't think it's up to the public to fund us. I think the doctors and surgeons should pay themselves. When anyone detransitions, they should be like, okay, you now owe that person like a startup, like get back on your feet fund, however much it is. Because a lot of us are stuck in the same situation, same clothes, same four walls. Some of us need to move to really get out, because you've got to keep in mind, like, a lot of us move away from our families and live closer to these communities and stuff like that. Not that a lot of people hang around, but you do remove yourself. And a lot of us are kind of stuck because we're in this position. And there are worse people who are stuck. I know people who are still trans who are locked into sex work, for instance. Like, and I'm not talking common, I'm talking like high value money, like thousands and thousands they're getting because they're in London or whatever. And they can't get out of it. Because they'll never make that money anywhere else for what they are, but they hate it. And they hate their lives. It's not what they say it is. It's all crap. But yeah, I kind of wish there was like a recourse fund for a lot of us. Even the ones who are staying in transition as well, who have been hurt, deserve it as well. Because what kind of bothers me somewhat is I got so much empathy and sympathy from people in this arena, but that kind of goes out the window when that person still identifies as trans. And the things that like, I've seen people like full on mock and belittle and dehumanize and say awful things about somebody who had surgery because they're still trans. But on my thread, I'm so sorry, Ritchie. It's such a horrible thing you went through. Just because I'm essentially clear-headed to say that. I get that, and I don't think that's right. I understand why people do it, but realistically, if you can feel sorry for someone like me, then you can feel sorry for the people who are still locked in that identity. If more so, they kind of deserve a lot more empathy and sympathy than I do because they're still in it, and it's so hard when you're in it, and it's a horrible feeling to feel like the world wants you dead. Like, it's so exhausting. It really is. I'm just tired of feeling like everything is a threat.
Yeah.
Walking is a threat.
Yeah.
Entire horrible way to live.
Yeah, and that, the fact that that's being exploited by medical professionals, people we're supposed to trust, it's so disturbing. And especially they are targeting vulnerable people, so it's like you said, regardless of what these vulnerable people believe or are wrapped up in or have been led to believe, or politically and all that stuff, it's like they are being subject to medical abuse, they are being lied to and gaslit. And I really hope that some of these medical professionals can be brought to account. I think that it will happen eventually, maybe not right away, maybe not even soon, but I think it has to break at some point. It is going to be eventually, it will be a medical scandal that, as it will be acknowledged as a medical scandal. But right now, we're kind of still.
I think it'll be acknowledged as the worst medical scandal we've ever been through.
Yeah.
Lobotomies were terrible, but the sheer numbers involved and the damage this is doing to families, policies, sport, nothing has impacted in terms of medical scandals like thamilamine. Oh God, I can never pronounce them. Lobotomies and this, like nothing has had as far as a reaching impact as this.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
so crazy.
Yeah. And it gets to the root of who someone is, what their relationships, their ability to have intimacy and have relationships. And that's just one of the reasons why it is so tragic. So Ritchie, thank you so much. I want to wrap up there because we've gone over an hour, and I
Sure.
so appreciate all your wisdom, all your experience. I really hope that someone watching this maybe could get it out there to someone who was considering this surgery. That would be the best goal, would be just to educate people who are going online and looking for info about the surgery, and maybe they're just seeing positive stuff. And hopefully we can educate more people that these are the risks, this is the reality. So thank you so much, Ritchie. We're going to leave it at that.
Thank
And
you for having me on, Sasha.
absolutely, I really appreciate it.